30 years ago to the day, Stevie Ray Vaughan passed. And now that really feels like a long time ago, but the questions keep coming in. What pickups should I use? What guitar? What amp, pedal, strings for that SRV sound? And you can really get lost going down the gear rabbit hole. But sometimes the answer you will get is the tone is not in the gear. The tone is in the hands. And there's a really cool video online of Stevie playing with Bernard Allison. And Stevie comes out borrowing a guitar which looks like a Squier Stratocaster. But immediately he begins playing and you can hear that's Stevie on the guitar. So it goes to show how much of his tone was in his hands. About a year or so ago, my friend Greg Martin of the Kentucky Headhunters introduced me to Steve Wilson. And Steve was the amp tech for Stevie Ray Vaughan at the end of his career, and he was even there the fateful night that ended it all. And I was able to sit down with Steve and talk about the gear they used and some of the modifications, but more importantly, exactly what Stevie was listening for and trying to get out of his gear. And that's really helped me with figuring out what I want. But for the purpose of this video, if you guys will indulge me, if I had to pick a single tone secret to getting Stevie's tone, what would it be? And I think there is something I can share with you guys that may help you in getting this tone. Obviously, there's multiple levels to this, and for that reason, I'll kind of break down everything that I used at the intro to this video to try to get as close as I could. But I think it starts out with having a good foundation, and to the surprise of some, I don't think it's the guitar. I think the most important part of the signal chain is your amplifier. And I like 60s, 70s Fender tube amps, anything from a deluxe reverb to a super to a twin reverb is going to get you there. My favorite time period for Stevie is 82 to 85-ish. And around that time, there's plenty of videos online. You can see a lot of times they were using 2 supers and 2 vibroverbs on stage. This is kind of before they got into the Dumbles and the Marshalls. And that's really my favorite tone. So I think you can get there with something like that. Now for the intro to this video, I used this ridiculous amp behind me, which is a dual Showman reverb from 1969. And I use this amp because it's got 2 15-inch JBLs, which is very similar to the setup that Stevie had with the 2 vibroverbs. He also used JBLs during this period. And I think there's something about the 15s that really replicate that sound. But even still, people will use these amps and swap out pickups and necks and pedals, trying to chase a sound in their head and never really get there. And I think the main reason, if I had to pick a single secret to getting his tone, you have to get these amps up and running where they want to be. And I believe it was Rene Martinez, Stevie's guitar tech, who was quoted saying they would start the night out at about 7 on the volume, and by the end of the night, the amps were all the way up. And that's really where these amps like to live to get the most out of them. I found that around 6 to 7 on the volume of a Fender amp, they really open up and you get this natural tube overdrive and compression, and it has that big kind of Stevie Ray Vaughan bluesy sound. And honestly, you don't even need to put an overdrive pedal in front of it at that point. And many people may not know, but a lot of the recordings and even some of the live songs just was straight into the amp and nothing else. So I wanted to give you guys a quick demo here of how the guitar sounds just straight in, turning the amp up to where it really wants to be. So as you can hear, you're getting some of that overdrive, you're getting some of that compression and sustain, and it's much richer than it is, let's say, 2 or 3 on the volume. If you're playing in your bedroom and you're trying to compensate with a pedal to get some of that, it's not going to sound the same. It's still going to sound kind of sterile and dry and lacking in sustain, but when the amp gets up that loud, that's really the secret to getting his sound. The other thing that they would do to make a really wide 3D sound was combining amps. So just combining the super reverbs and the vibroverbs, you're getting the 10-inch speakers plus the 15s. And something I found in owning this amp back here is that there really is a tonal difference in the 15s. The cleans are just a little bit cleaner, and the bass response is really big. So I think that's why Stevie ended up keeping those throughout his entire career, even though he had access to some of the greatest amps in the world, like the Dumbles. So the amp, obviously very important, but the guitar comes next, and the pickups, very important in the guitar. Having a decent set of pickups, it doesn't have to be some crazy boutique set, but something that's gonna give you a decent sound. And then really, the setup of the guitar is very important, more so than people think, I believe. I think there's too much importance put on string gauge in his tone, really, than other things like the action height. You wouldn't believe how much tone is in raising your action rather than changing the string gauge. So I think getting the setup right on your guitar, using some larger, taller frets, something like what I use on my 59 Stratocaster, which is 6105 or Jumbo, and then raising the action up and getting yourself a decent set of pickups. You could do that to any guitar, any Stratocaster that you have, and you're really going to get close. Now for the intro to this video, I used my 59 Stratocaster, which has 6105 Jescar fret wire I installed myself. Still a 7 1/4 radius, has the original 1959 pickups. I did add a 5-way switch, and I wire the tone pot to the bridge pickup control. That's the way that I like to do it. But pretty much everything else on the guitar is stock. So again, you don't have to have some crazy vintage guitar like this. I would just recommend some kind of reissue that you can do a few mods to. Now, the final part, I guess, is the overdrive pedal, and many people think Stevie used a TS-808, and he did early in his career, but he kind of adopted whatever new design Ibanez came out with, which ended up mostly being the TS-9, it seems like, and then ultimately with the TS-10. As far as that goes, in my experience, I've tried a lot of overdrive pedals, and you know, it seems like they all kind of do the same thing. They're all similar circuits. And I use a reissue Ibanez Tube Screamer TS-808. It's just what I like. It's sentimental to me. But the difference is when you turn up your amp, the settings on this Tube Screamer are going to change. So I would typically run an amp at about 6 or 7 on the volume, and then the treble around the same, the mid's about 5, the bass, the magic number for me is about 3, and then really the reverb is to taste and depending on how the reverb interacts with you on your amp. But when you're working at those volumes with your amplifier, the Tube Screamer doesn't have to work as hard. And you're getting all that natural overdrive, compression, and sustain from your amp. So you just want the Tube Screamer to add a little bit of drive and a little bit of coloring to it. So for me, I have the drive pretty low, I mean almost all the way down, and then the tone and the volume up to about 12 o'clock. And I think probably that's similar to how they were running it live back in the day, but I don't know if we will ever know for sure. That's how I do it, and if you were to run those settings on a tube amp that wasn't at that volume, if it's around 2 to 3, it's going to sound really sterile and clean, and it's not going to sound right. But if you turn it up to that level, that's the way that you want to run it. So I think that really covers everything that I used at the beginning to try to get the best Stevie Ray Vaughan tone that I could, and hopefully this video can help you guys in your pursuit of trying to get your tone. I love Stevie. He's a big idol of mine. This is 30 years since his death, so I wanted to make a video as kind of a tribute. And it's a hobby for me. I enjoy it. I really do. You don't want to get lost in the gear, but I can only play guitar so many hours in the day, so I like to have other music related things that I can kind of dig into and have fun with, and this is one of them. So for those of you out there who take it too serious, please don't. It's just for fun, and it's about keeping music alive and keeping the history of all these musicians that we love alive. And You know, guitar playing is something that I love, and I want people to continue to enjoy it and to find it. And so I hope these videos will do that. So I really appreciate all of your support out there, all of you liking and commenting, subscribing. That really has helped me grow my channel, and it means so much to me. So I have to thank you every video. And I guess I'll see you in the next one, all right? Until next time, peace.